Hi everyone, I'm Gautam aka the Seeker of Wisdom. I'm a manifestation coach, and today we're going to be talking about narcissism, anxiety, avoidant attachment styles, and so on. Now, before I do so, I'd like to remind you guys I am available for coaching. I offer one-on-ones, courses, and masterclasses. I also have a free Facebook group and a paid Facebook group, and last but not least, I also have a mailing list. If you guys need any information on any of those things, feel free to email me or DM me via Instagram for more info, and I'll be happy to guide you guys on that. And without further ado, guys, let's get to it. So I'm going to be honest with you guys right now. I really don't know where to begin this video. I really sat down and thought about it, but I really couldn't figure out where the starting point of this video should be. And so I'm just going to go dive in and go with the flow, and I'm just going to start. So forgive me if this sounds like a ramble. Forgive me if I seem like I'm all over the place, maybe because I am. But nevertheless, the things that I'm about to share are going to be useful for you guys, especially if you are dealing with a narcissist, or especially if you identify with the idea of experiencing anxious, avoidant attachment styles and things like that. So this is going to be useful for you guys if you are finding yourself being in that situation, or if you find that those words could somewhat describe your situations. And I am a person who's not really into labeling things, so this was new for me. So a bit of a background. So as you guys, some of you might know, if you're on my Instagram, you would have known this. I have been on a break, but what ended up happening was the break was supposed to be 3 weeks. I was supposed to go to a couple of places for about 3 weeks and return home, maybe take a week, to readjust and then go back into my life as usual, as though nothing happened. That was my perfect plan in my mind. But as soon as I went, things happened, and I had to immediately shift my plan a couple weeks down the line. And so my break got extended as a result. And also things didn't exactly go to plan in my break either. So by the time I came back, I had so much things to process. That took another couple weeks. And then here I am. So what was supposed to be a 3-week break became 5 weeks almost. And then thereafter, I took another 2 weeks or so right now to process a lot of those things that happened back then. And that's why it took me so long to even make a video, because I wasn't in the space to do so. I wanted to talk about a lot of things, but simply put, I just couldn't sit down and make a video because of the things that I was going through. And I know a lot of you have been asking me to make this video or that video, and I hear you. And thank you for your patience. Honestly, it's not that I don't want to make a video. It's not that I'm not heeding to your requests or anything. There was just a lot on my plate. And I'm also going back to school. So that's that for me to look forward to, and also mentally prepare for that as well. So I'm just giving you guys context, because a lot of you guys might be wondering, okay, why isn't he making a video? Why is he on a long hiatus? What's going on and things like that. And a lot of you have been messaging me on that as well. So I just want to get that out of the way, because you guys have been supportive. You guys have been very patient with me, and we did reach 1,111 subscribers. And, I did announce the winner recently as well. So I'm really happy, because the channel is hitting major milestones for me, and I like doing this. It's not that I don't like making YouTube videos or something, but I had to sit down and process things, because if I don't, truth is it's going to drag me down as time goes by, and I'd rather not have that, basically. So in my travels, one of the main reasons why I traveled was because I wanted to meet a few people who I would say are very important to me. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of it, because it's very personal for me. No, it's not an SP situation, if you're already wondering about that. But nevertheless, these folks are important to me. And I wanted to meet a few people. And I couldn't meet all of them during this trip. But I just wanted to go and meet a few people and experience the US as well, because it's my first time to the US. It was also my first solo trip, anywhere for that matter. So needless to say, I was looking forward to these experiences, and I had a wonderful time for the most part. It was very funny, because the person that I really wanted to meet the most was the person whom I had the most unpleasant experience with. But the thing was, it's a blessing for sure, because I realized the things that I have to work on myself, and definitely where I would, need to change. And also the good news was that I also had a lot of clients who who went through these experiences, and previously I might not have had the vocabulary or the skill sets to help them out, but right now I do. And so for that specific reason, I'm very grateful for the experience that happened for me. I don't see this as, okay, this happened to me, I'm a victim and things like that. Like, this definitely happened for me, for the betterment of who I am, for my growth and for my expansion, 100%. But nevertheless, I can't deny the fact that this experience was intense for me. So, long story short, one of the persons that I dealt with was, you could say they had like narcissistic, toxic, controlling sort of tendencies. And I didn't know how to process that. And as a result, the things that happened were pretty much an intense experience where I was constantly had my boundaries not respected, and I was disrespected, to be very honest with you guys. I was disrespected in many instances, but I kind of just pushed it aside, acting like it was not a big deal. And I was also very overwhelmed because it was my first ever experience in a new country, and mind you, like I experienced so much good things, and that overwhelmed me too, because for a long time, like, I thought I had clarity on a lot of things that I wanted, and then finally I go to this place and it made me rethink a lot of things in my own life, my personal goals and everything. So especially in the first few weeks, and it was so overwhelming. And thank goodness I had a few friends to help me out throughout, and these friends were well versed in the law of assumption, and I was really grateful for that. And so as I was processing all these things with a couple of my friends who are spread across the world, one thing that they said about this specific person was that they were narcissistic, controlling, and, to be honest, toxic. And so I was pretty shocked when I heard that from like 3 different people, pretty much from across the world. And mind you, these aren't like folks around my age or something. These were folks who were way elder to me and who had way more experience than I did. And right now, what I'm describing is in the 3D, and I'm going to be talking about it from a manifesting lens as well. So bear with me on that. But long story short, when they all came to the same conclusion, I definitely had to recognize that, okay, this is happening. Because mind you, I was in denial to an extent, because I was like, okay, if everybody is me pushed out, am I not creating this person? So how can I be mad at this person? Or how can I say that this person was at fault? Because clearly it's my fault for creating this person this way, and it's my fault that this person is appearing as such. But at the same time, I couldn't deny that whatever that this person was doing to me was very hurtful, and the fact that I found it pretty overwhelming. So how do I deal with this, right? Because right now, if everybody is me pushed out, I needed to intend otherwise. But when you are constantly dealing with this person every single day, how do you go about the process? And that was my biggest dilemma. And the truth was, as much as I handled it, I didn't handle it, if that makes sense. So every day there was something that I had to deal with. And for the most part, it all went well. But by the time those 5 weeks ended, like, I couldn't recognize myself. I couldn't trust my thought patterns. I couldn't really see myself as the person that I did like 5 weeks prior to that. I was not the same. And so one of the main reasons why I had to sit down and process all these things was I didn't feel like myself. I was constantly doubting. I felt like I was stepping on a landmine every single step of the way. And truth be told, if it wasn't for my friends, I wouldn't have dealt with it, right? So I realized a lot about myself in those 5 weeks. And one thing I realized was, generally speaking, I consider myself to be a very confident person. I have done a lot of things in my family that went against the tradition, that went against the norm. Everything from my career choice to every single decision that I took to live my life. It has been nothing but unconventional, against the norm, against the traditions that was established. I'm not an engineer. I'm doing a YouTube right now. I'm a manifestation coach. this is not a career path that anyone in my family would have recommended. Heck, I didn't even know that this path even existed like 3 years ago. So needless to say, I have been breaking barriers my whole life, and I've been doing that fearlessly. I've been doing that without considering what others might say about me, because truth is, I know life is short. I recognize that people are not going to be here forever, so you have to live for yourself, not for others. And so I considered myself to be a very confident person. Everyone that I know of to an extent in my family don't really approve of what I do, right? As much as there are folks who are supportive of what I do, 90% of my family members may not be on board, right? So that includes like my grandparents, for example, or anyone else for that matter. In my close circle, I have been very fortunate, but even then, there's always that layer of skepticism. Like, is he going to make it, sort of thing, right? So my point is, I've always considered myself a confident person because I have been not only been able to break these barriers, but I have been able to break these barriers and thrive in the process of doing so. And that wasn't easy, but I had to work towards it for sure. But I'm proud of where I am right now. So I did consider myself, okay, like I'm a confident person with regards to career, with regards to my life. I got this, right? And I've been thriving, and I've been so proud of myself. Even going solo, traveling solo for the first time, it was probably like 1.5 days of flight time across the Pacific. I've never crossed the Pacific before, and I was so proud of myself for doing those things because I had to navigate 3 different airports that I've never been to. I had to navigate things that I thought I may not have been able to do it without a friend for the first time, but I did it. Everything went so smoothly, and I was very grateful for it. So overall, what I'm trying to say is that I really see myself as a confident person, but dealing with this individual that I just described made me question my whole worth, my whole confidence level, and everything else. And so that kind of threw me off, right? So imagine going from like thinking, okay, you're a really confident person, and then one person making you feel like, were you really confident, or were you really gaslighting yourself, right? So it was that kind of like a, complete shift. And I'm glad it happened because I realized that there were certain layers that I haven't uncovered yet for myself. And like always, it always goes back to childhood wounds that I may not have fully addressed before. I thought I did, but there were certain layers that I didn't address before. And that came up to light for the first time in a long time. And as a result, I was extremely grateful for the things that happened the way it did, because I was able to then see, okay, these things happened for me to address whatever wounds that I have so that I may become better. So that's the lens that I'm seeing it through. I am not seeing it as like, how did this person did this to me, or how could this person do XYZ to me, or why did they say XYZ to me, and things like that. Although there was a bit of that in the beginning, but I quickly reverted it because I recognized like, okay, this is there for my expansion and for my growth. And I'm going to be talking about the EIYPO of all this. Everyone is pushed out in all this as well. But this version of this person has made me realize the things that I have to work on 100%. So I can't be upset at the situation or with this person for that matter, because like what Neville would say, even the wicked have a purpose. Even the wicked have a purpose in the sense that they too will make you realize something. They too will aid you in the fulfillment of your desire. Neville always spoke about instances where there were thieves and robbers or people with ill intent, but whatever they did always worked in his favor. So if you guys remember the story of Aida play, where Neville wanted to bring his 2 brothers who were in the city to watch this play called Aida. And Neville was in this queue despite everywhere saying that this tickets were sold out and things like that. And long story short, the person in front of Neville was a con man who was trying to, if I'm not wrong, give $10 bills for something that was priced slightly higher and get the tickets or something. So he basically cheated the man based on the way he folded the notes or something like that. And Neville called him out And, this man got his money back, the owner. And because of that, when Neville asked for the AIDA tickets, he got it. He got it in the VIP row that were reserved tickets. Neville got it for his brothers. I mean, he had to pay for it, but mind you, this show was said to be sold out everywhere, that you can't get tickets everywhere. But he assumed otherwise and he got it. And the bridge of events involved a person who was a thief, who was a con man, right? So the other instance where Neville spoke about people having ill intent but working out for you was, there was this man, I can't remember the exact context of it if I'm not wrong, but this man wanted to see Neville fail in public speaking for some reason. I'm not too sure why, but I remember this from a lecture. And Neville was given this opportunity by this man to speak at a large crowd. And Neville, I think, was in his very early days for speaking in public and things like that. So what ended up happening was the situation worked out for him. People actually came and rallied, and the audience grew for Neville. And years later, if I'm not mistaken, that this person was in some sort of trouble, and Neville chose to help him. And when he asked why, because he said, you might have done it for one reason, but it actually worked out really well for me. And so my point is that if you have a bad experience, or if somebody is treating you in a bad way, as much as that situation might suck in the moment, don't victimize yourself. Don't think like, okay, the world is doing this to me, or, people are always like this to me and things like that, because there's always a blessing in disguise. There's always a silver lining to this. Everything is aiding you in the fulfillment of your desires if you allow them to. And I just wanted to say that because I'm describing a lot of things that happened for me, which wasn't pleasant, and I'm not even going into details, right? And the reason is because I don't want to A, relive those things, and B, really portray something like, badly, because I don't want to victimize myself. I really want to empower myself through this. So that's why I'm really breaking it down as such. But long story short, as I said, this person's behaviors was definitely something I would not put up with in a general setting. Like if anybody else were to do that to me, I would have easily put up a boundary. But this person was somebody who meant the whole world to me. And they still do. And as such, I was blindsided, big time. My emotions did cloud my judgment. And as a result, I wasn't able to see a lot of things clearly. And so as a result, I had to get external opinions, outside, opinions. In fact, I just had to ask outside folks, like, what do you think about this situation? Because I can't think for myself right now. And that was a first time happening for me. And so, mind you, when these people told me what was going on, what the nature of the situation is and things like that, and as I've had time to reflect and journal down all these experiences and gain clarity, I realized what the problems were in my own life. And long story short, the issues that I have been facing was due to me having certain childhood wounds that I've not addressed in a long time. Again, I thought I did to an extent, but there were certain layers there. And that had manifested itself in certain people, certain individuals, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And so what was the result of all that? What was the outcome of all this realization and reflecting and things like that? So I realized a couple of things. Firstly, as much as you might like to take accountability for everything, as much as you would like to say, you know what, everyone is you pushed out and things like that, I don't want you guys to use that to justify the other person's behavior if they are wrong, for example, which is what I did. So what I'm saying is that if they are hurting you emotionally, or even physically for that matter, I don't want you guys to sit there and say that, okay, because everyone is you pushed out, I am responsible for that. In a way, yes, but don't use that as a reason to continue to be the punching bag in that situation. Like if you have to remove yourself away from a specific situation which is causing you hurt in the 3D, please do so. And I'll explain to you guys how to deal with it later on. But if you are in a situation right now where it's causing you a lot of hurt, even if this person is your SP, you need to remove yourself for your own mental well-being and in some cases even safety. Like if your person is like physically abusive, if your spouse or your partner is physically abusive or even emotionally abusive, you need to get yourself out of that situation, because otherwise you're going to perpetuate that cycle because your mental state is not going to improve. So I'm saying this because, in the law of assumption community, we have this thing where we want to take accountability for everything that's going on in our lives, but don't let that paralyze you from putting up boundaries, from taking action to ensure that you are having a mentally peaceful state of mind, or to ensure that you are pretty much safe physically and mentally. Because being happy is one thing, but like you do need the mental peace of mind to even function, and you do need to ensure that you are safe, right? Like that is just basic 101 right there. And I don't want the idea of, okay, everyone is you pushed out to be the reason as to why you guys are not removing yourself from certain situations. I really don't want you guys to have that on your shoulders, basically, because to an extent that is what I did. But the good news in my case was that it wasn't that bad and the duration wasn't that long, because one thing that I realized as I spoke with a lot of my friends and my clients is that there are situations where folks can be stuck in these types of things for like decades sometimes, which is, for me, I can't imagine that, because I was there for like 5 weeks. And by the time I came back, like I didn't recognize myself to an extent because of whatever that happened. Like my thoughts, I wasn't able to really trust myself to an extent, right? I was constantly second guessing my mannerisms and the things that I do and things like that. I had folks assuring me like, hey, whatever that you're doing is fine. Like you need to relax. But that begs the question, where did this person's behavior stem from? If everyone is truly me pushed out, which I still do believe, where is this coming from? Because when I went there, I didn't create this person that way. I didn't imagine this person to be as such. But that begs the question, okay, where did this person's behavior stem from? It was still within me, but it was not because of the fact that I thought of this person in a specific way, but it was my patterns that was deep down in me that was projected on this person, right? So when we are encountering with like SP situations or even in work situations, for example, we might not think of certain people in a certain way right from the beginning. But as time goes by, as we establish a relationship dynamic, they start to exhibit very similar patterns, sometimes going as far back as childhood, because we have not processed certain things within us yet. And so what ends up happening is that because those thought patterns are somewhere still existent within us, those relationship dynamics get established between new people as well, so to speak. So the person that you meet, maybe in your workplace, your manager, you might think, they're a good person. But as soon as you start working with them, a couple weeks into it, they might start exhibiting behaviors that you might have experienced in your previous workplace that was unpleasant. Same thing with relationships. You might have given up with your SP, for example, and you might have moved on to a new person. And then that person exhibits the same qualities, the same fears that you experienced with your SP, you're experiencing it with this person as well. In other words, the relationship dynamic gets reestablished in another person. Why? Because you happen to be the common denominator of all the experiences. And if you don't deal with the things within you, you will continue to experience it in one way, shape, or form. And that is not to scare people, right? The good news is that you can resolve these things, but you can't resolve these things by changing the other person or recreating the other person here. The issue here is really you. And that's what I realized here, was that there was a deep-seated belief in me. There were things that were within me that I hadn't addressed for a long time. Again, that went as far back as childhood, that I didn't address and that I didn't resolve, because even though I thought I did, clearly there were layers that I hadn't figured out. And I'm not beating myself up for it either, mind you. That is why I'm saying that this situation happened for me, and I consider this as a huge blessing, because the revelations that came out of this was there are still layers for me to resolve. And the good news is that when I do resolve it, I'm only going to make myself better. I'm only going to attract better experiences. And that is why I'm saying, like, when you figure this out, don't beat yourself up for it or whatsoever. Don't say that, oh, how did I not see this? Or don't think that this is going to last forever or whatsoever, right? This can be changed, but it can't be resolved by affirming for the other person, by holding them in a better light. Those things may help for sure, but if the core of you isn't changed, if your self-perception is the issue and you are not solving that part of you, then you're going to have to be dealing with these types of situations one way or another in other people as well. And that's exactly what we don't want in our lives. We want to have quality relationships. We want to have relationships that gives us a peace of mind. I'm not just talking about it from a romantic standpoint. I'm talking about it on every single level possible, from our friendships to our work relationships to our romantic relationships, the relationships that we have with our families. We want all of these things to be cordial. We want each and every one of those relationships to help us grow and expand and be our source of strength rather than a source of our weakness. And that is what my goal is by talking about these things. The intent of this isn't to say that these people are bad, they suck, you are better than them, so just let them go, drop your SP, change your whoever you are manifesting and go after another. No, that is not what the intent of this video is, but rather recognize that these people are showing up as this because there is a deep-seated belief in you that you need to change. But the question is, okay, while I'm making that change, what do I do in the 3D with these people right now? What do I do with this version of them that is showing up? Because like what Bashar says, like what Neville says, there are infinite parallel realities. There are infinite parallel realities, meaning there's a version of them that is ideal for you. Still, there is a version of them. But that version of them is a version that you have yet to experience because you have not made the change within. And truth be told, unless you do something radically different, they are not going to be changing. And for a lot of people, one thing that I've noticed is that unless you kind of take a step back, and that is to go no contact, you can't really change it, because the thing is that you're constantly dealing with something new because of the old thought patterns. Right? Something new keeps popping up that you have to deal with, and it becomes a struggle. You just add on to the resistance, because every time you say my SP loves me, and then they do something in the 3D that goes, no, they are not, right? It just adds up to the resistance. So rather, what I recommend my clients to do, and mind you, I have seen this time and time and again, is to take a step back, because if they don't, they're only going to add more resistance to this whole thing. So one thing that I'll definitely recommend is that if somebody is coming off as disrespectful, put up a boundary, make the interactions as minimal as possible. And by doing so, what you do is you allow the space to address whatever that's within, so that the external world reflects that properly, so that you are not letting the external world get to you in the meantime. And it's easier said than done at times, and I empathize with that. Like, for example, if you're dealing with a manager who's always very rude to you, it may not be possible to avoid them, but at the same time you can always put up a boundary if they ever cross it. For example, with an SP, don't be afraid to go no contact, because I always tell this to people, like, think long term. Don't think the next week or the next month. If you want to have a happily ever after with this person, think 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. Think about your happily ever after. why wouldn't you take some time off to build a better foundation for your relationship, for your happily ever after? You have to think about it that way, because otherwise you're always going to be stuck in this cycle. If you're not willing to go no contact for a week or two or even a month to resolve whatever that's going, which is only going to help your relationship become better, right? You don't want to perpetuate and be in this toxic cycle for years to come. So why not take this time to resolve whatever that's going on within and manifest a better version of themselves, and in the process also become a better version of yourself, right? Someone that is closer to your ideal version. And that is the way you should see this, because otherwise you are constantly going to be in a place of self-doubt, distrust for yourself, second guessing, which is going to take such a toll on your self-concept. Now, lucky for me, I wasn't in an SP situation. I don't want to describe my dynamics and who this person was to me. Again, I don't want to get into those details, but I can say that if this was an SP, it would have taken a way bigger toll on me than it did now. And I can say that because I've seen people go through that, and it's not fun. It's really not fun. And I want to save you guys from that, to be honest, because one of my friends just asked me, and I wrote this on my Instagram post as well. This person, because my friends and I, as we were having discussions, they were pointing out what these, this person's actions, what they were doing to me and how they are not acceptable and things like that. But I was trying to understand how, if I am the one creating it, why should I be mad at this person and things like that. And my friend just simply posed me this question: listen, if I was experiencing something like this with my toxic ex, would you approve of it? And it just struck me. And I said, heck no. And she was like, there we go. Why are you tolerating this behavior then? And that kind of hit me, even though it was so obvious. And I realized, okay, the importance of boundaries. Again, it was about thinking long term, not just with this person, but what kind of folks do I want to experience? Because the worst thing that can happen to us is, once we start accepting something, it becomes a pattern. And if you recognize something becoming a pattern, potentially, you stop it as soon as you recognize it. You nip it in the bud. So that is what I had to do here. So I recognized a pattern that could potentially be stretched out. In fact, I even heard stories where people did not do anything about that and how they suffered as a result. And those horror stories was a reminder for me that the universe always brings back lessons to you again and again and again if you don't learn from them. And that is not to say that there is some higher almighty there that is standing there judging us, but rather it's just a built-in mechanism of the universal laws, right? Because if you're not addressing something, you're not resolving something, your thought patterns don't change, your state of mind doesn't change, and you keep experiencing the same things again and again and again. Why? Because you are the common denominator across all of these situations. And that was a huge realization for me throughout this. And so as I started to recognize this, I started to make some things very clear for myself. So the first thing that I told myself was to have better boundaries, because clearly I didn't. So I said, from now, there are certain things that you will not compromise for anyone. I had boundaries for a lot of people. In the past, I have cut a lot of people away from my life. And it's not that I'm angry towards these people or is that I hold a grudge towards these people or something. But I just didn't have space for certain people anymore. Family members, I mean. And I have cut people out of my life. So I had to also establish it for folks that mean a lot to me as well, if they are encroaching in my boundaries, i.e. self-respect, right? If they are disrespecting me time and time and time and again, I have to put up a strong boundary. So that was one big lesson for me. Second thing is to always put yourself first above everybody else. Selfish as it may seem, you have to always look at your own needs. Because throughout this journey, one thing I realized was I was thinking about a couple of people and their needs, and what will happen to them if I took certain measures or precautions, or how will they feel neglecting myself in the process of doing so. So I realized that I have to change that. Like, really put yourself first, no matter what. And of course, you're doing it with love for yourself and not with the intention of hurting somebody else. And so when you do that, because everybody's you pushed out, because, everyone sees you the way you see yourself, people are going to reflect that. People are going to understand that. So you're going to be fine. So I had to reiterate those lessons to myself. So those were some of my key takeaways. And also not worry about spoiling potential relationships that does not serve me. And I think that was one of the big ones for me. But at the same time, I recognize why I did it. Like I said, I'm not beating myself up or anything. I recognize why I did things the way I did. But I also recognize the fact that, hey, you have to change, because you don't want to make this a potential pattern in your life. And as I reflected on this, I already recognized that this was not exclusive to this person that I dealt with. This was peppered in my life in other areas as well. And my friends already helped me spot a few people who fit the description. Oh, this person sounds a lot like your so-and-so. And I'm like, oh my God, they do. And I already realized that this pattern, this type of relationship dynamic has existed for me in the past. And I'm so thankful for the fact that my friends picked it out for me, because again, I am so in it, right? Like emotionally involved in all of these things that I couldn't see things clearly, because it does cloud your judgment, and you need somebody external to tell you, like almost like an external audit for your company, right? Like you need people to tell you, hey, this is what's going on here. And that's what happened in my case. So by the time I recognized it, I was like, okay, great. So these are the changes that I have to make. And also the importance of remaining unreactive was one of my biggest lessons. Unreactive, not in the sense that like, okay, if they something is like a tit for tat kind of situation, but rather reacting in your mind, remaining calm. Those were lessons that I had to reinforce in my mind with certain relationship dynamics. Because in certain relationships dynamics, you might find yourself overly explaining yourself or doing things, going above and beyond. And I told myself like, okay, no more. That doesn't mean you don't do things for your loved ones and things like that, but never at the expense of your own welfare was my biggest lesson. And also the idea of prioritizing your goals and working on always feeling, not just like in certain instances, but like always feeling safe, confident, and secure. And really working on that. Not making others like doubt you. Like not holding some person in such a high regard that their opinion of you makes you question yourself. That was a huge one. And that to me was one of my biggest lessons, is that as growing up, like, we hold our parents in high regards and we often let their opinion like affect us when it comes to maybe career aspirations or, like relationships, like, okay, is this person good for you? And things like that. And then as time goes by, as we meet people and we grow and like certain people become very close to us, sometimes it's our relationships, sometimes it's our very close friends or folks that we consider to be our mentors and things like that. And then we hold these people to such a high regard that we start to let these people make us doubt ourselves. And that was a huge one for me. I had to recognize like, hey, never hold somebody in such a high regard where their opinion make you doubt yourself. And I, again, let myself do that to myself to a certain extent. It wasn't extremely bad or something, but in my case, it was light, but it was bad enough for me to recognize, okay, I wouldn't want to experience that in my life anymore, if that makes sense. So I was thankful to recognize that lesson. So these were some of my key takeaways, and realizing all of this has made it less of a blow for me. But then again, the things that I experienced then at that point, I have to release it out of my system. And that is why I took a bit of a hiatus from everything. And I'm thankful that I did, because in the process of reflecting and journaling down all these things, I realized a lot of these things that I'm sharing with you guys right now. And that is why I always encourage clients, like a lot of you out there are very reluctant to journal things down. Oh, it's not my way of processing things. Oh, I just like to talk it out to myself. No, write things down, like, period. Because if you do, you're going to have something to read. Because if you're doing it in your mind, there's no record of it. And don't just type it down, write it down. Because the act of writing things down is therapeutic. It ingrains things in your mind a lot more than if you had to type it down. If you think you can't recognize your handwriting after writing things down, like me, I have a very bad penmanship to an extent because my mind works way fast. So I will write everything like almost like cursive. So sometimes I may not understand a certain word or recognize a certain word. So what I would do is that I would write it down and I would also type it out later as well. Because iPhones have this like neat feature where you can like take a photo and like the phone will do some of those things for you if your handwriting is not that bad, right? So you can try that, or you can just type it out, read it once, on paper, and then just type it out. Like it won't take that long, I assure you guys. But write it down so that you may recognize the clutter that is in your mind. When you put it on paper, it becomes so clear for you. And you also have something to refer to so that you don't fall back into the same patterns. It's always good to keep a journal or record of like how you're going about your process for manifesting money, your SP, your dream house, and things like that, because it gives you something to fall back on. You don't have to retrace the steps in the future if need be, or if you're telling somebody else, the exact steps that you took to get to that point. And I can't stress how useful that process has been for me, like keeping a record of things. So I would encourage you guys to do the same. And that's about it, guys. Honestly, I know this was a long video, but it had to be a long video for you guys to A, understand the context, and B, so that I can really go into depth and explain all of these things, because otherwise, you may not be able to appreciate why I'm saying what I'm saying. So that is why it was long, but I hope you guys were taking notes. If not, I encourage you guys to watch this again and take notes, because I really want you guys to ingrain this in your mind, because I know that this is not exclusive to me. I have seen this with clients very recently as well. So that is why I really had to, sit down and make this video, because I know that this is going to be helpful for a lot of you out there. And if you are going through a extremely narcissistic, abusive kind of relationship, I just want to assure you guys, like, you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can definitely change this situation, but this isn't a question of, okay, how do I go about changing them, my SP or my boss or my coworker or my parent. It's about how do I solve that's within me so that I become secure enough that whatever that goes on the outside does not affect me anymore, to the point where even if I have this person or not have this person, I would remain unaffected. And that is the point I want you guys to get to. And that isn't to say that you will not get this person by becoming a confident, secure person. But when you do this for yourself in that way, you may not even want to choose this person. You may want to choose somebody better, is what I'm trying to say. Because sometimes it's not about changing that person. Sometimes it's about becoming and growing into such a secure person that, like, that person becomes so unattractive to you. That happens. And I have seen clients who really work on their self-concept, and they will tell me like, hey, you know what? I don't want to work on this SP anymore. And I go, absolutely fine. Why? Because you realize that you don't want to settle for less. And I'm not saying that that is always the case, but that can happen as well. And a lot of people, it's sad to say this, but like many are afraid of reaching that point. Oh no, what if I grow so much that I lose interest with this person? I don't want to lose this person, and I get it. I completely understand. But one thing I want to remind you guys is A, you don't want this version of this person, right? You want the version that is, perfectly compatible for you. Like what Bashar says, like what Neville says, again, the infinite parallel realities and the ideal version of your person exists. So if, for some reason, if this is the person that you want to be with by hook or by crook, the good news is that, you can do that. That is the ideal version of them that is perfectly compatible for you, for your ideal version. But if you're not even focused on that, if you just want to be in that perfect relationship, if you just want to experience the best possible thing that the universe can offer you, you can take that route as well. How? By focusing on yourself, by doing the inner work that's within you. And when you do that, everyone will come to you with like super hot behavior. I've experienced this. When I did the internal work at one point, everyone came to me with like super hot behavior. And what you can then do is choose. Like whichever person you want to be with, you can choose. That's how good it can get. And I want to assure you guys that by doing the inner work, you're not going to lose your SP. You're going to manifest the best possible future for yourself. And after all, that is what we are all working towards. So work on yourself. Become better. And solve all that is within so that you may experience the best possible reality on the outside. Guys, we have come to this end of this video. If this video resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Turn on the bell notifications so that you guys will know when I upload a new video every single week from now. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.